Developing Awareness. That is the name of Module 3 in my 8-week anxiety relief program called Peace of Mind in Our Modern World. So, developing awareness. Even though it's the name of Module 3, I would actually say that this is a pretty common theme throughout the entire 8-week process. And in fact, I may go so far as to say that developing awareness of self is possibly the key to our relief of anxiety. So, what does that mean? Anxiety is something that is created within ourselves, right? So, by developing an awareness of what's happening within ourselves, we are able to navigate our internal landscape better. So that means that instead of our insides doing what they please, if we are triggered by anxiety or triggered by anything else, we can be triggered less because we are more aware of exactly what's happening inside of us. Okay, so that means everything on our internal landscape, from physical symptoms to thoughts, beliefs, worries, fears, whatever it is that could possibly be construed as a trigger. Okay, and by developing this awareness of our triggers and not just being aware of them, but really starting to understand and get to know these triggers, becoming vividly aware, acutely aware of these triggers, we can then begin to shift our reaction. Okay? And so that's something that happens with mindfulness meditation. It's an effect of mindfulness meditation, is that we can then, instead of reacting to things, we can choose how we respond. So instead of reacting, we respond. And so being able to do this with our triggers is something that will help us exponentially as we try to navigate this world of anxiety. And so we're not going to get deep into this here, but it is something that I dive really deep into inside the program. And that is the exercises that will allow us to deepen this awareness. Because deepening awareness within ourselves is actually, I would like to say, one of the most difficult things we're ever going to do. I'm laughing, but it is true. It's really, really difficult to go inside and really start to learn about why these things are happening, what's going on. And then, of course, the benefit, though, is that we can start to shift these things. So if they are not helping us, how do we change that so that we are helping ourselves, right? And so some of these exercises, they basically fall into three main categories. And that is mindful inquiry, meditation, and expression. Okay? So expression is so important. Okay, but first, I'm going to back it up. Mindful inquiry. So it's one thing to say, become aware of yourself. Yeah, okay. You know what? Become aware of yourself and, you'll be able to relieve your anxiety. No problem. Of course, that's a lot easier said than done. Some people might not even know what the heck that means. You're like, yeah, I'm aware. I'm anxious. I'm having heart palpitations. Like, yeah, you're aware of that, but is that really helpful? So mindful inquiry is really about asking yourself and inquiring within yourself with the correct questions, with the questions and the inquiry that is actually going to help you shift the way that your mind works, right? So it's the difference. Who is that person? I can't think of his name right now, but he's responsible for neuro-linguistic programming. But he says, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions that you ask. And so how we relate that into ourselves, it's also the quality of questions that we ask ourselves. Okay, so really getting in digging out questions from within us. And this is mindful inquiry, really being aware of the specific questions that we need to ask ourselves to get the answers that will help us relieve our own anxiety. Okay. And then, of course, there's meditation. So meditation is so beneficial in self-awareness because it allows us to take that pause. It allows us to watch our thoughts instead of being consumed by our thoughts. So, for example, if something is triggering me, maybe not even with anxiety, but for example, somebody will yell at me or say something that I find very offensive or upsetting, and I will just turn around and say, I am experiencing anger right now. Okay, yep, I feel anger, right? So instead of that response of, oh, how could you say that? I can notice, oh, look, anger is showing up for me. Okay, how do I want to respond to this? What should I do right now to assist myself, assist the situation? And so by sitting in meditation and watching thoughts come in and watching these thoughts leave, we become more able to do this even in just regular, like throughout the day. So there is a lot more information on that, specifically how that works, in the original webinar. So if you still haven't watched that, then I recommend you do watch that because that'll give you a little bit of background on what I'm talking about. And then the last one is expression. And this is something that a lot of people I find have a lot of resistance to, is this expression aspect of it. You know, they will sometimes come along with me and, you know, ask themselves questions and they'll sit in the meditations. And then when I ask them to express what they have found or express these, the answers to the questions that they've asked within themselves, a lot of people are a bit resistant. And so, unfortunately, for those people, it's a really, really, really important part of this whole process is being able to express those. And so I absolutely recommend journaling. Journaling has a lot of different things that you can do. You can start the day with your intentions in a journal. Write down what you intend to do that way, how you plan to show up that day, who you want to be that day. You can track your meditations, which can be very valuable to see, what's helpful to you what's easier for you on some days and not on other days. How did you feel? What did you think about? Then, of course, to journal journal any negative events that happened during that day. You know, journal your anxiety, journal your recurring thoughts. Okay. And, we dive deeper into the very specific questions that you need to ask yourself in order to get the best results when you're journaling. But one thing that I also love, and I think this is so, so, so important as part of the journaling, is at the end of each day, keep a piece of paper or your journal or a little small book beside your bed. And right before you go to bed, end the day by writing down 3 things that you're proud of yourself for that day. 3 things you're proud of yourself for. So this could be, that you are feeling really anxious and in the grocery store line, but you made it through, you paid for your groceries, and you left, right? That could be something you're proud of yourself for. Maybe you had to have a social event that you were not feeling good about, but you went and you did it and you actually felt good in the end. That would be great. Another thing, like it could even be really simple. Like I got out of bed today. I'm really proud of myself for that because it was a really hard day. I didn't want to. I got up, I got dressed, I made breakfast despite wanting to never leave, right? So anything that you can think of that you're proud of yourself for. Even if you made a really awesome plate of spaghetti for dinner and it tasted really good and you're like, man, I did a good job cooking that dinner. Write that down. Write 3 things that you're proud of yourself for. If you want to do more, like do it. If you're having a really rocking day, like write as many as you want. But try to write 3 things you're proud of yourself for each and every day. And then, so that's journaling in that way, right? And then there's also different activities that we can do, different meditations where we come to understand visual representations of our feelings, of our thought processes, okay? Because something that's really interesting about humans is that we are visual beings, by nature. We used to write our language in symbols. I mean, we still kind of do. A is something and B is something. But we used to literally, like if you look at hieroglyphics, all of a sudden that word doesn't sound right. But, the Egyptians wrote them on the wall. So they were actual pictures, right? The indigenous peoples in North America, they also did the same thing. They had pictures that told people, instead of writing specific words all the time, right? So we are technically visual beings by nature. And so sometimes, like, I'm sure you've all had this at some point where someone's like, oh, but like, how are you feeling? What does it feel like? And you're like, I don't know. It just feels like, or it's, I don't know. I can't explain it. Right. And so we explore different ways of expressing these feelings, without actually having to use words, because sometimes words can be the most difficult to explain feelings. And so basically it's about learning different ways that we can understand ourselves. And so, I mean, a lot of times at this point, people, say to me like, oh, you're sounding a little bit woo-woo at this point or what have you. But honestly, like, and you know what, this program really isn't for anyone, but it is for people that really want to shift their anxiety, that want to take back control over their anxiety, stop living in anxiety's grips, and actually want to start living a normal life, right? So it's not necessarily going to be comfortable. In fact, it's not going to be comfortable. But what the point is that we learn all of these different ways to express ourselves, to understand ourselves. And by doing these activities, by doing these exercises, we actually begin to give ourselves this framework of really exactly what's going on inside of us in ways that we've never realized that we may be able to express this or understand this. And so this is a huge, like it's a module 3. But it really is it's an underlying theme of the entire, for me, it's the underlying theme of how to relieve your anxieties, to really become understanding of exactly what triggers you, how it makes you feel. And the more and more that we get connected to this, the more and more that we can learn how to, one, be with it, and two, give it less power over us. Because the more you understand something, and this is true in pretty much any field, like when you're in math class or something, right? You get into math class and they're like throwing all these numbers at you and you're like, oh gosh, like this is overwhelming and I feel upset and I don't like this. But then when you go home and you do some homework and you start to figure it out, the next day during the review, you start to feel a little bit more comfortable. It doesn't seem as intense anymore, right? And so this is anything that takes a learning curve is a little bit uncomfortable. But how uncomfortable is your anxiety right now? And so getting really aware of all of these things within us is so key to moving past this, because there's a saying, and my lovely dear friend James Wedmore says this all the time, but what got you here won't get you there. And I don't know if he made that up or if he got it from somewhere else, but it's something that's ingrained in my head. What got you here won't get you there. So for so many of us, suffering from anxiety for years upon years upon years. I mean, some people are suffering with anxiety for decades. And so to that I say, when people question these methods or start to think that, oh, maybe I don't really like the sounds of that, it's like, okay, cool, but what are you doing right now? And your anxiety is still with you for the past 3 decades or 2 decades or even 5 years, right? So this is the work that needs to be done. And so, as I've said, we get really a lot deeper into this in the program, but a couple of things that you can take away right now are to journal your triggers. When you have an event or a negative event throughout your day where you feel riddled with anxiety or unable to cope, or you're feeling a lot of difficult anxieties come up for you, write that down. Write that down in your journal. Where were you when it happened? Who was around? What were your feelings? What were your thoughts, etc., etc., etc. Write all of that down and keep it near you. Keep a book with you so that every time this happens, you can write it down. And then you can start to see patterns, right? And that's a really interesting part, and also really helpful part, because you start to say, last time I was at the doctor's office, I felt this way, and actually I was totally fine. So you can start to shift your process. And like we said before, thoughts aren't facts. So when we think something's going to happen, now we have evidence to support that, well, actually last time it didn't happen. Okay? So that's one thing you can do. And two, write the 3 things that you're proud of yourself for each and every day. And then, or every evening before you go to sleep. And then in the morning, get up and read them. And starting your day remembering these 3 beautiful things from yesterday is such a jump start. And so I encourage everybody to go and do that. And of course, as always, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the group. If you haven't joined, I don't know if you're seeing this in the group or not in the group, but either way, make sure that you are in that group if you're not in the group already. So, yeah. I hope that helps. And I am so excited. Like I said, the course opens on October 14th. So I'm excited to working with a group of you a little bit deeper. Those of you who are really, really intent on learning how to alleviate this anxiety, then I look forward to working with you. And in the meantime, please do these tasks. And for everyone else out there, do these tasks because I'm telling you, they will significantly help you become more aware of your own anxiety, how it is manifesting within you, and how then you can start to shift your thought process around that. So, hope that helps, and I will see you soon. Thank you.